Hi, class. This is Professor Kristen Irie again for Human Resources Management. I'm going to be going over our second topic, which will be actually a combination of performance management and talent development. And I'll get more into that as we go through this. But as I talked about in my first video, I divided the overall course into three primary areas. The first being compliance, talking about all the laws that are required in human resources and employment law for organizations. The second being performance management, pardon me, my itch, performance management and talent development. And the third being total rewards. So that one will come after this one. So today we're going to talk about performance management and talent development. Again, I have my notes, so bear with me if I refer to my notes as we're going through this. But to kick us off, I want to start by talking about training. Performance management is a very wide and broad topic, but training is an essential part of the long-term success of any organization. So organizations need to have good training programs in place. Organizations need to be able to accomplish their goals, and taking a strategic approach to training will help with that. So, for instance, and we'll talk again a little bit about this more, if an organization is struggling with recruiting for a specific position, they may decide instead of looking outside, they want to grow their talent. When an organization needs employees, it needs talent, it has three options. It can buy expertise, basically, which means that you are hiring for expertise. You're hiring externally and you're going to pay more. You can grow expertise by focusing on specific positions or individuals and training them and skilling them up so they have the skills needed to fill current and future positions. Or you can rent, meaning you can rent expertise. You can pay consultants and outside contracted individuals to perform tasks and functions that need to be accomplished. Generally, an organization is, better when thinking strategically to grow and skill up existing employees. It is a huge investment, and employers don't always see or understand the potential return on that investment. But training is, an essential part of any organization. So you have a category of strategic training, meaning that you've identified a gap or a missing skill or a hard to fill position, and the organization takes a strategic approach to that. Maybe they offer a class internally, maybe they identify people and send them externally for training, but they look at it more from just recruiting to fill the position. They look at it from a strategic lens, which is, focusing on what are the goals and how do we get there. And that's the difference between just managing and thinking strategically, especially when it comes to training. Organizations need to invest in training. They can invest in many different ways. They can start an internal program. I myself am in the process for my employer of designing an internal university, meaning that employees will have an entire course catalog of training they can choose from to attend and be a part of and progress through. It's called it's a city university. I work currently. I'm consulting for a city, but and it's just using the label university, but it's internal. The organization is creating and building a training program. Organizations can go out externally and have training for their employees individually, or they can go externally and have an external consultant or company or another organization or a vendor design and build something from scratch. So they have many options when it comes to training. What an organization will use and pick and choose, it could be any combination of those three, but largely it's driven by the budget. What resources is the organization putting towards this endeavor? How much money, what resources, what people are they going to put forward for building, buying, or borrowing a training program? Those are important things. And again, an organization can pick and choose any three of those combinations if they so choose. Another reason for training an organization will look at is the competitiveness. Organizations need to not only develop and grow their people, but they need to do that in order to remain competitive in their field, in their industry. Organizations that don't put money into training and don't develop their people have a competitive disadvantage in their marketplace. We all know that technology moves at the speed of light. Organizations need to be on top of industry advances, field advances, and technological advances, especially when they impact a specific industry. So those are very important things. I'll give you an example. The organization I work for is a very small organization that is exploding in growth. It is almost doubling in size every year, which starting with 50 people to 100 people to 150 to 300. So the growth is pretty phenomenal. But they run into many issues because of this extreme growth. But in order to remain competitive, an organization needs to identify specific industry advances, but also technological advances, and train their people. So one of the things that my organization has been traditionally very bad at is public communication. So we went out and we hired a engagement specialist, like a PR person, like a public relations person, who will use all those social media platforms and all the communication tools they have at their disposal to do a better job representing us and communicating to the public, because we didn't do that well. And that's a competitive advantage, making sure that we're providing an open and transparent communications to the public in general. So I would definitely say, this person, obviously they're very savvy with social media and communication platforms, but there's going to be some training involved. But, having a dedicated person to that role really helps to solidify the position the organization has, and to really do a better job of just communicating overall. But that was a need they didn't have a year ago. And the training and the growth and the technology and understanding how all these different platforms of social media work together. And there's a Facebook page that prior to this person coming on board was updated once every 3 months. If there was something to say, we posted it, but there wasn't any intentional engagement, and that was a big piece we were missing. So this person will fill that role, and it is a distinct competitive advantage to be able to do that. So what's important is that an organization is linking their training to their organizational objectives. That's essential. There needs to be stated and specific outcomes that link back to these objectives. And there needs to be activities that the organization is getting a return on investment. So if that is the training itself, is that a workshop, is that reinforcement of the learning that's happened, these are all very important pieces of any organization's training program, regardless, again, if they go external or internal or a combination of both. It's important for in order for an organization to really feel the benefit and see the benefit of training for its employees is linking that back to the individual job performance. It's great if your employer sends you to training for a new system, but you're not getting that new system for 6 months. You have this big in-depth training and then nothing happens for 6 months. The problem that creates is that you're not using the knowledge you gained. And like everything in this world, if you don't use it, you will lose it. If you speak multiple languages, but you don't have an opportunity to practice, you're not going to maintain a proficiency level with the second language. It's the same thing with training. If an organization does not strategically plan training, what happens is the employees are getting training, but they can't use and build the skill. The way to make sure that the employee is benefiting from the training, and as a result the organization benefits, is to make sure the training is planned accordingly so that the employee has an opportunity to use it and to reinforce the learning. Very important when organizations are setting up training programs. I'll talk briefly about global competitiveness in training because that is a major issue. We have a truly global global world, meaning that globalization, that a lot of the physical barriers have come down, and a lot of the abstract barriers have come down. Technology. Most of you, well, all of you, are sitting in a foreign country a half world away. I'll be very excited to meet everyone when I come to campus. But this is an example of globalization and its impact on organizations, on opportunities, on training, on learning, on knowledge alone. So the idea that organizations can maximize technology with strategy and link it to performance and link it to goals and link it to long-term success, that is the ultimate in globalization. Organizations that have, and pardon me, my eye itches, organizations that have a global presence, meaning they're not just hosted in one country, they have multiple locations, can utilize training on many different levels. They can have employees training in the domestic country. They can have employees training in a foreign country. They can have a host country. They can have all different options. And then again, they can also have the communication and the skill of organizations for increasing global awareness and cultural awareness and concentrated globalization. So organizations that are foreign to how the company normally operates domestically, training can help bridge that gap. So it's an important part of globalization and global competitiveness. Next, I want to talk about training and human resources. So where does all this tie back to human resources. The most important thing is that human resources make sure that we're addressing the legal issues with training. Because as with everything else, with human resources and employment, there are compliance issues, there are legal issues, and there are very specific things that HR has to be aware of to protect the organization and to make sure that they're performing in alignment with strategic goals of the organization. So there's a lot of legal issues when it comes to training. There's issues such as how the training is designed, who can access the training, what's the delivery of the training, are there any barriers for people who have either disabilities or any issues with accessing traditional methods. There can be issues for translation, there can be issues for hearing impairment, there can be any imaginable issue can pop up when you're designing and delivering training. So HR gets into this and provides support, even if it's not a course they specifically have designed or they're even delivering. But they're making sure that we're hitting all the compliance pieces to make sure that the training is being accessed by the most people in the most efficient way, and of course is legal in doing so. It's important to note that, there are different categories of training. The first of which, are the legally required trainings. Things like sexual harassment prevention, diversity and inclusion. These are standardized trainings that every company in the U.S., if they're not required to, because there's some laws, state laws, that do require them to provide sexual harassment prevention and diversity and inclusion every year. If an organization is small enough, it may not provide it every year. It may not be required to provide it every year, but every organization needs to provide this kind of training once a year. It is an opportunity to make sure employees understand expectations. It is an opportunity to make sure the organization is clear in what the policies are and what behaviors are and are not expected and tolerated. And it's also a good way to control risk. Organizations that don't provide this kind of training or set any expectations, set themselves up for potential for lawsuits. And it's very difficult to defend a lawsuit for sexual harassment if the employer has not done anything to establish what the expectations are, what the behaviors are, and what the consequences will be from deviating from those standard expectations. So legally required training is a category. Obviously, HR has a large role in that, but that's just one of the areas of training. Basic and remedial skills. So if a person is hired and they don't have a good understanding or use of, say, Microsoft Excel, most people know what it is and can navigate because they've had experience either in school or at a job or whatever. They may have, enough to get by, but they may not have really good skills, and they certainly don't have either intermediate or advanced. The organization can provide training for basic skills and the opportunity for employees to advance and grow within their position. So there's also an opportunity for remedial skills training, meaning someone is hired but they have no experience with whatever specific topic they need to learn. The organization can provide those kind of trainings. Those are very skills-based trainings. Those are skills versus behavior. So technical training, on the job training, again, very skills-based type of training. Employers may want to, as we talked about, skill up employees and provide them the opportunity to advance and to fill positions. And we'll talk a little bit about succession planning, because that's exactly what that is planning for who is going to be moving into new positions, and career planning and succession planning on what employees are going to fill what roles in the future, including management and above. And then, of course, there's soft skills. Soft skills I best describe as behavioral-based training. So the idea of providing customer service training, that's not a hard skill like Excel that you can say, this is where you click, this is what you do, this is how you create a chart, this is how you create a graph, this is how you make a pivot table. These are all the things that they have actionable and tangible skill results. Soft skills are extremely important, grossly underestimated, and not often provided training for employees on soft skills. Soft skills are behavioral-based skills. They are about, again, customer service. They're about how to deal with conflict, how to deal with difficult people in the workplace. Negotiating, with others. These are all skills that are behavioral based. There isn't a tangible program or item that they're tied to. So they're referred to as soft skills. So just to review, for our training categories, we have legally required training. We have basic and remedial skills. We can hire someone who doesn't have the minimum skill set that we need, but we really want to hire this person for whatever reason. So we're going to train them up by providing them the base skill set to perform the job and perform their functions. You have job and technical skills that, again, could be something like Excel or Word or Microsoft Office, or a specific computer package. If there's a specific software package that an employer uses, this is when the employee would be trained on it. Many organizations have a human resource information system, meaning it is the database for all of human resource information and employee information. It's all stored in one place. So that could be a technical training that is offered to a new human resources, because while there's, the employee coming from another organization may at some point had some exposure to a human resource information system called an HRIS. It may be different than the one that they're going to be working on now. So that is a job and a technical skill that an employee would want to learn. And then, as we talked about, the soft skills. Soft skills are training for behavior, customer service skills, how to negotiate, how to deal with difficult people in the workplace, conflict management, conflict resolution. These are all training employees for behaviors and expectations. There's nothing specifically tangible tied to customer service skills. When you pick up the phone, how do you greet the customer? When you talk to them, how do you? When you end a conversation, how do you talk to them? These are all behavioral-based training, and they're called soft skills. All right. Moving along as we are, I'm going to wrap up with training soon, because I'm taking time from splitting this from training, and the other half will be specifically talking about talent development and performance management, and how do we get to that piece. So we have a few more minutes. I'm going to kind of start to rocket through a little bit of this, just so we can get all the content covered in about an hour here. So first of all, one of the areas where employers fall flat in training is employee onboarding. Traditionally, that's been called new employee orientation, new hire orientation. The modern term that's used now is employee onboarding, meaning we want to bring the new employee on board with very little difficulty. We want them to associate, assimilate, and be ready to do their jobs. That's why we hired them. Organizations often overlook how important a good employee onboarding program is. As one of my things I've been tasked with is I'm developing a new employee onboarding program for an organization that's never had one before because they've never had the growth to support it. They did things informally, but now it's time to build structure. An employee onboarding class can be one day, it can be 1 week, it can be half days. You generally don't go, unless you're a huge organization with multiple moving parts, you don't usually exceed 2 weeks of an employee onboarding program. Most are between 1 and 5 days that first week. The organization has the opportunity to introduce the new employee to how the organization runs, what the functions are, learn all the nuances. Pardon me, my eye is itching. Oh my goodness, I have a contact lens problem. There it goes. What the different departments are, what they do, how they work, how they relate to each other, how they'll be relating to the new employees' jobs and functions. You know, where's the cafeteria? Who's your human resource contact person? All the things you need to know about working for this new organization. Employee onboarding also makes the employees feel more comfortable. I don't have the exact number right now, and again, I apologize, my contact lens, my eye is getting a little flittery. But there are verified statistics out there that say employers that provide an onboarding program have better retention rates. The employees feel more comfortable and they want to stay longer and they perform better overall, which makes sense because if you feel that you're being welcomed, you have the opportunity to jump into this new position, it's nerve-wracking and you're filled with anxiety and you're insecure and you're unsure when you start a new job. What am I doing? What did I get myself into? All those thoughts are going through your head. So with an employee onboarding program, an employer has an opportunity to not only make the employee feel welcome, but to start to reduce that level of anxiety that they're going to feel in the first week, no matter what. It's just part of the human condition of who we are. So that's, a big part of why employees stay longer and have more success in their job when they have a successful onboarding program to bring them into the organization for the first time. So I'm going to talk briefly about a training needs assessment. There's lots and lots of literature out there about a training needs assessment. A training needs assessment is just that. It is identifying what are the gaps, the knowledge gaps in an organization. I'm so sorry if I keep winking at guys, but my contact is, I guess it's drying out. It's been in too long. Pardon me. But the training needs assessment is identifying knowledge gaps in an organization and designing and targeting your strategic goals, aligning them with training. So if you have a knowledge gap for a particular software or a particular function or whatever it may be, the organization is going to discover that through a needs analysis and design training programs to help close that gap. They're going to target specific departments, employees, job functions, whatever it is, and provide additional training that contributes to eliminating that skills gap. So that's what a training needs analysis, a training needs assessment does, is identify it's talking to, it's providing a survey. It's gathering data and information about the organization and about what skill sets are existing and what skill sets they need to add and build to be successful. So, all right. There's a lot of things to consider with training, design and delivery. There's different options for training. There's online training. There's simulations and games that can be on-site or online. We have mobile learning, which that just means that you're learning from your phone. There are so many different apps out there that will teach you anything imaginable right from your phone. I have an app I'm trying to learn Spanish. Don't ask me to say anything in Spanish because I am nowhere near any good at it right now. I am terrible Spanish speaker. I'm working on it, but there's a little app on my phone. I was able to tell someone un momento, meaning one moment, and I will get back to you. But that's the most I got out of, I'm working on it. So I'm learning that because it is essential for advancing in my job, because we have a lot of bilingual and Spanish speakers for the organization that I'm working at. So mobile learning is helping. I downloaded an app and I'm working through it. So it's an opportunity for employees to expand skills by using mobile learning. So there's blended learning, which is a combination of on-site and on-classroom. That's what we're doing right now, is eventually I will be there on campus to deliver lectures and oversee the finals. That's a form of blended learning. There are schools that offer more intense and blended learning, meaning that you're online every week and you're in class every week, or any combination about it. Organizations take that approach as well. You can provide a blended learning environment by offering information online, offering courses online, and having employees show up in class or in a course or workshop at the end or at the beginning or at any stage in between. So blended learning is very popular, and it is a good way for employees to learn new skills and information and retain them. Because online is great, but that extra classroom for employees, it reinforces the learning. There needs to be something after the training is completed that reinforces the learning and gives the employee or the learner the opportunity to demonstrate and use the knowledge gained. It's very important, because otherwise they're not going to retain it and they won't be able to use it when the time comes. So providing an opportunity to reinforce learning, the online and the blended models, they usually work really well to do that. So, all right. I'm going to skip into talent development now. That is the end for our training discussion and lecture, just in the interest of time, to make sure that we're covering as much as we can. So talent development, talent management, performance management, these are all terms that we're reading about and we're learning. Sometimes they're used interchangeably, sometimes they mean very different things. So the idea of performance management is all encompassing. It is training, it is development, it is career progression, it is career succession. It is all these menagerie of terms used to describe managing employees and their performance in their jobs. That's all that's about. The idea of talent development is more focused. It is looking at the employees and working with them to create and design career paths. And I'll give you an example. Traditionally, and as I've talked about before, I am a lawyer, but don't hold it against me. Traditionally, in law firms, and for someone who went to law school, say someone who went to law school 30 years ago, I did not go to law school 30 years ago. I'm not quite that old, despite any gray hairs you may say. But taken, for example, someone who went to law school 30 years ago. 30 years ago, when they came out, they took their bar exam, hopefully they passed, and they went to work for a law firm. That was the career option, that was the progression, and that was the expectation. And then in the first 5 years, you worked for a law firm, you worked crazy long hours, you worked nonstop to prove yourself worthy to be invited to be a partner, meaning that you have an ownership interest in the law firm, and you share in the profits more than just a regular attorney associate. So it was always thought that if you came out of law school and you went to work for a law firm, the only thing you did was keep your head down and work yourself to death until you were eventually able to make partner. We have a different approach now. There are many people who don't want that lifestyle, because once you become a partner, yes, you're making more money, but you're working even more hours. You're working 90, 100 plus hours a week. That is a grueling schedule to maintain and keep your sanity, let alone be able to visit your family. At some point, you just end up having visitation with your family because you're working so much. So it's evolved dramatically in the past, I'd say even 10 years, where attorneys have a lot more options. If you don't want to be on what's called the partner track, where you just work yourself to death until they invite you into their club, then you look at other options. You look at managing certain areas of the law firm. So, for instance, employment law or specific clients. I wouldn't necessarily want to be on a partner track because I have kids and I would want to see them. They need to be able to know that I'm still alive and I exist. And working for a law firm, you don't always have those options. So what happens is there might be a dual career ladder or something split off from the traditional path that I might want to do. Sometimes that would mean staying at a law firm and looking at other options, maybe managing a specific practice but without the intent of moving up to partner. Or that could mean leaving a law firm and going into human resources with an employment law background. Working for a consulting group that has lawyers that handle and design benefit plans and they need the legal expertise. So there's a lot more under the talent development and career planning side than there ever used to be, because we're seeing different ways to use education and training than what we've done in the past. You went into law school, you came out, you practiced as a lawyer. That was your option. Now there are so many more options and so many more opportunities available to lawyers and to all employees. Not everybody wants to be a manager. There are many employees who are really great at their job. And what happens is an employer or a boss will recognize and say, hey, that person's great at their job, I'm going to promote them to manager. The person gets promoted to manager and it's a complete and total disaster. Why is it a disaster? Because the employee was good at their job. It doesn't mean they're good at managing people. And that's where we're linking performance management, talent development to training to say, let's give you some skills to be a supervisor. And the other thing is, not everybody wants to manage people. It is not easy to manage people. We are all independent thinkers. We are going in different directions. We have different ideas. Sometimes we communicate, sometimes we don't. It's not easy to manage people, especially if you're managing a large group of people. Not everybody wants to be a supervisor or a manager. So it's important to have alternative career paths for these employees by looking at training and performance and where are they going? What are the next options? If management and supervisor is not what they want to be doing, what are some options? Because if we have a great employee who's great at their job and is happy doing their job but does not want to be a manager, at a certain point you want to make sure you're keeping that employee, but you're still challenging them. So organizations need to look at not just the straight career path of entry level here, mid-level here, and then supervisor manager. Not everybody wants to do that. So there needs to be opportunities to move from here to here to here, lateral and yet non-lateral, but not necessarily right into management, because not everybody wants to do that. And if you are forcing someone into a supervisory role with no background, no experience, and no training or skills on how to manage people, they're going to fail. And you're setting them up to fail. And that's not how you want to treat employees. So talent development, under the overall umbrella of performance management, looks at individual employees, individual job functions, and it says, okay, where does this person want to progress? Some people, they absolutely want to take that straight linear path of entry level, mid-level, supervisor level, management level, director, VP, whatever the structure or hierarchy is. There are many people who want a straight linear path. But there are employees that, don't want a linear path. They want to be everywhere. But we need to maintain them and retain them because they're good employees. And it's much cheaper and better for the organization to invest in existing employees than it is to replace and hire employees. It's an expensive endeavor to hire employees. And if you have great employees already, you need to focus on developing them into what they can be and what they want to be. So it's a very important part of talent development and performance management. When we're talking about performance management, it's an overall strategic term, because again, when we talk HR strategy, all that means is that we're linking HR actions back to the organization's overall goals and objectives. You're aligning human resources to the business goals. That is creating a strategy. So for talent management, we have a couple different things to talk about to start with. Is identifying high potential individuals. That's very important, because those are the people who become your next level of management. They become your future organizational leaders. And high potential means that, they're doing a great job, they're developing, they're moving forward, and they want to move into management. Opportunities for an organization to create a management training program. So while a person is performing their job, say, they're past entry level, they're now mid-level, but they're performing their job and they're doing it really well, there's not an opportunity right now to move into a management position. But again, we want to keep, grow, and retain these people who are working hard and successful for the organization. So what are the options? What do we do if there's nowhere for someone to go? One of the things that, is a strategic approach is to look at management training programs. So an employee does their regular job, but in between doing the regular job, they may have specific courses, skills, training, workshops, things that give them the skill sets to manage people. So everything from understanding, as we talked about, conflict resolution, conflict management, negotiation skills, how to deal with difficult people, how to manage, multiple personalities that you're going to deal with in the workplace. All these different things are those soft skills that we talked about, and they focus on managing people. which is always the hardest thing. It's very easy to manage things, you move them around. It is easier to manage technology as long as it's working. We've had our moments. We've all had our moments. As long as the technology is working, it's very easy to manage technology. The most difficult thing to manage is people, because they all have different perspectives, approaches, preconceived notions, biases, either conscious or unconscious. So people are very complex, and you have to learn through experience and training how to manage people. So a management training program takes that one step further and sets the foundation for someone who may not be in management yet, but when they successfully go through this program, when an opportunity comes open, because someone leaves, retires, moves, gets promoted, and there's a void to fill for management, the next person that's going to be selected and tapped for that opening would be someone in the management training program, because we've provided them with the skills that they didn't have before, but it's a baseline. And once they get into that position, they'll have a better understanding of what to do and how to manage people. And it takes away a little bit of that learning curve of, what do I do now? How do I manage these people? And it gives a little bit more of a foundation. The best way to learn to manage people is to manage people. You learn through the experience of it. You learn what to do and certainly what not to do. I have a very long list of what not to do's in my career when it came to managing people. And the management training programs provides a foundation instead of just throwing someone into the position and saying, good luck, you're great at your job, so now you're going to manage 4 people. That's not fair. That sets an employee up to fail. So talent development looks at these opportunities to say, okay, who are our high potential? Who are the people that I would expect would have my job when I leave, retire, get promoted? Because they're just great performers, they're great team builders, they have the skill sets we need to be, that we want to invest in for them to be a leader in the organization. So high potential employees are generally identified pretty early in their careers, and they may be fast-tracked, they may be offered targeted skills training, they may be offered leadership training, because they have a natural leadership ability. Leadership skills can be learned, but for some people it comes easier than others. For those who don't have a natural leadership ability, they have to learn it. And I believe that, a leader can be made. It just takes work and a willingness for the employee to, go through that process of learning how to lead. So high potential employees are the future leaders in an organization, and organizations, especially large ones, that may have, voids that have to be filled for management and above, either currently or are planning to in the future. We have in the United States a record number of older employees called baby boomers who will be retiring. They are leaving the workforce in large numbers, and they're taking all their information with them and all their knowledge with them. And if organizations don't have a plan to train and progress employees through various levels with support and skills training, then they're going to have big problems. I've been in organizations where someone leaves and no one else knows how to do this one particular function, which is amazing to me that there can be one sole person who knows how to do something. The organization that I'm supporting now, one human being in that entire organization knows how to do payroll. If something happens to that one person, they quit, they get fired, they're hit by a bus, God forbid, Nobody can do payroll. We don't get paid. And it's ridiculous to me. So that kind of, identifying, okay, who's going to cross-train, but who's going to be next to step into the payroll shoes, that kind of planning is important in an organization. So if you have individuals that we've identified that have leadership skills or potential for leadership, their high potentials are going to be developed faster within the organization. The organization's going to put more resources into them because they're getting more from them. So, moving on, we'll be wrapping up soon, but talking about succession planning. So succession planning is exactly what I just talked about. It is identifying positions that are going to be open for any reason. Again, we have a huge number of senior leaders and executives that are retiring in the next few years because they're getting to that age. It has been happening gradually over the last 5 years. When someone turns 65 in this country, they get their they get their Social Security, so they get their monthly paycheck for all the years that they've worked. They get their Medicare, so they get health insurance, so they get all these benefits. So there's no reason to stay in the workplace if you don't want to. So we have a large number of people who are older, or 65 and older, or even 60 and older, who are leaving the workplace and they're taking all their knowledge with them. Succession planning is a way to help curb that. It is a way to say, okay, we know the following 1, 2, 3 executive positions are going to be opening in the next 3 years because these people have expressed they want to retire in the next 3 years. Who do we have right now that we can start developing and have and give them the skill sets and the training and the knowledge they need to move into that position with very little disturbance to the organization? Because what happens when an organization has, gaps because someone leaves suddenly or they retire or they're hard to fill positions, it impacts the organization in a negative way. More people are trying to do more things to compensate for those gaps being there. And it can create problems. It can create internal problems as far as process, people not knowing what to do or where to go for something. It can create problems externally for vendors. If vendors have a contact and customers, they have a contact and there's no smooth transition of, oh, hey, this is so-and-so. When I'm not available, he's going to be your touch point, your contact. I'm training him to take over my job. It is a much smoother transition, which is very important for customers. Customers want consistency. They want to know when they call, they know who they're talking to. And if there isn't a plan for that, an organization is negatively impacted in many ways, but they can also end up losing customers because there's no opportunity for transition and the customer wants to feel taken care of. Succession planning is, again, part of an overall business strategy that needs to align with human resources. Human resources, everything they do, needs to support the goals and the mission of the organization. And succession planning helps do that because as we're identifying gaps and potential new positions, we're identifying people who have the skill sets to support and to move into those roles, even if it's not right now, in the short term and even in the long term. And that's how organizations remain successful and are able to achieve their goals. They're able to achieve long-term success because they're preparing for the next stage of how employees are going to progress. We've identified 3 people who have great leadership potential. Let's get them into a management and training program. Let's give them opportunities and we'll give them skills training and workshops. And from there, within 1 to 2 years, they're ready to move into management. Well, they do a great job in management because we've prepared them to do a great job. The next step will be to the higher senior leadership positions, like your director level or, or assistant vice president, things like that. And we've done a great job preparing them for management. Now let's give them the skills to move into VP. Because when you're going from your manager level to an executive level position, one of the greatest things someone ever said to me is the difference between being a manager and a leader is the ability to see around corners. That just means that you are so prepared as much as you can be. You are familiar with not just your organization, but your industry. So you can predict and plan for potential challenges, pitfalls, disasters, successes. While you cannot plan for everything, that's true. I mean, there's nothing you can do. There are things that happen in this world that are beyond our control no matter what. But the difference is how we respond to them. And if we're able to have a plan in place to deal with all the small little things that can distract and destroy, when something really big comes into place, something big comes along, our focus is not split into so many directions that we can't see what's coming at us. I'll give you a great example. When I teach business strategy, this is one of my favorite examples. Kodak, the camera and film company. If you're old enough to remember them, I don't know how many of you are millennials or the new generation is Z, that's Zoomers. But Kodak manufactured cameras and film for over 100 years. Kodak was the first company in the 1970s to look at digital cameras. Kodak created a digital camera, very rough prototype, but they created the technology for a digital camera in the 1970s. And what happened was the executive leadership, the CEO, the COO, they were so concerned with their profit model because Kodak didn't make money on selling cameras. They made money on film. You bought a camera once for $50, $100, $20, whatever it was, but before digital cameras were so prevalent or cell phones, you had to buy film and get it developed. So they got you going in and they got you coming out. So you paid anywhere from $8 to $30 for film. You put it in your camera, you took your pictures, you wound it all up, you took it out of your camera, you took it to the drugstore to be developed on Kodak paper, mind you, because you bought your film from Kodak. And that was their profit model. So they didn't rely on making money from cameras, they relied on making money from film. And the executives at Kodak killed this rogue project of digital cameras because it would impact their profitability and their profit model too much. And when digital cameras, the technology became more available and started to develop more in the 90s and into the early 2000s, Kodak, the executive leadership team, again, pardon my eye, I apologize, it keeps slipping around. The executive leadership team and the CEO famously stated to the world that digital cameras were only a fad, they weren't going to be around long, and everybody wants to go back to the quality of film. And that was Kodak's famous last words. And they did not respond to the change in the technology. They did not respond to the change in consumer behavior. And as a result, they went bankrupt. They were a huge employer in upstate New York. They had global holdings. They had, multi-million profits. And they were around for over 100 years. It took them 100 years to build the organization. It took them less than 5 to destroy it by not being able to see around corners that the technology was moving a different way. And because they refused to recognize that, Kodak went bankrupt. They're not around as the same company they were. They lost, all their naming rights for buildings around the world. They lost everything. So the difference between a management level, where you manage functions, day-to-day tasks, and people, and an executive level is strategy. It is seeing around corners. Because this is where the strategy is created, and the management level is where the strategy is carried out. Here is where we're thinking about what has to be done in the short term, in the long term, and for the life of the company. And down here is who we need to make sure we have the functions to carry it out. So when we're talking about succession planning, it's important to recognize that each step that a person progresses through their career, they're picking up different skill sets because they need different skill sets. When you're going from a mid-employee to a manager, you need to know how to manage people. When you're going from manager to executive or higher, you need to know how to manage strategy. And that strategy will dictate how the managers manage their employees. So succession planning is making sure we have the right people in the right jobs at the right time. If employers don't look at how important succession planning is and putting together a strategy of succession planning, they'll have gaps they can't fill. It'll create problems internally and externally, and it could lead to a loss of profit or integrity within the organization. When the positions go unfilled for a long time, it creates real problems. So, all right. So I'm going to wrap up there. We're at our hour. I normally take this time to say, are there any questions? But you guys can't respond because you're just watching me on the video. So, but of course, if you have questions after you see this, you can certainly email me at any point in time. I'm always happy to answer any questions. If there's anything else you need from me, just let me know. I've been very impressed with everyone's engagement level in their course this time. Everybody's done a great job. I see how hard you work, and I truly appreciate it. And it's made teaching this class a real joy. I have truly enjoyed it. So we only have a few more weeks before I'll be coming to campus to deliver some lectures live. I'll also have the last lecture posted, and I'm trying to get it posted early, so I'll get that posted probably this week, as in a couple days from now. We have Thanksgiving on Thursday, so everything's shut down, but I hope to get that posted very soon for you guys. So thank you all. Have a wonderful day and take care, and please feel free to email me if you have any questions about anything. I'm happy to respond. Have a great day. Take care.